Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel. The morning started like any other in the small coastal town of Sundrift. Quiet waves lapped against the rocky shore, and a soft mist hung in the air. Kor, a skilled mechanic known for his resourcefulness, was tinkering with an old motorcycle in his workshop. His hands were stained with grease, and the air carried the scent of oil and sea salt. He enjoyed the solitude, preferring the company of machines over people most days. That peace shattered when a deafening roar cut through the sky. Kor looked up just in time to see a streak of light tear through the clouds, heading straight for the dense forest on the edge of town. The ground shook slightly as a distant crash echoed in the air. Curiosity overpowered caution. Grabbing his toolkit and a flashlight, Kor hopped on his motorcycle and sped toward the forest. After all, it wasn't every day something fell from the heavens, and his adventurous side couldn't resist. As he reached the crash site, his breath hitched. A sleek, metallic object lay embedded in the earth, glowing faintly. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Smooth, seamless, and shimmering with colors that seemed to shift in the light, the object was surrounded by broken branches and singed earth, the air thick with an otherworldly hum. Then he saw her. A figure emerged from the craft, stumbling slightly. She was tall and slender, with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer like moonlight. Her eyes, large and a brilliant shade of violet, locked onto him. Her hair, a cascade of deep blue, glowed faintly in the dim light. She wore a form-fitting suit that appeared to meld with her body, covered in faintly glowing patterns that pulsed in time with the craft's hum. Kor froze. This wasn't a dream, this was real. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. The alien girl spoke first, her voice melodic yet strained. "You, human," she said, her words broken and heavily accented. "I need a hard thing between your legs." Kor blinked, his mind reeling. Did she really just say that? A mix of confusion and embarrassment swept over him. What?" he stammered. Taking a cautious step back, she gestured toward him, her movements urgent. "The hard thing between your legs. I need, important." Kor's eyes darted to his motorcycle, then back to her. Realization dawned. "You mean the metal rod?" he asked, pointing to the kickstand of his bike. She nodded furiously. "Yes, the hard thing between legs, metal, I need." Suppressing a laugh, Kor couldn't help but find the situation absurdly surreal. All right, no need to get excited." Kneeling by his bike, he detached the kickstand and handed it to her. "Here. Is this what you need?" She took it with a look of pure relief, her fingers brushing his briefly. Her touch was cool and soft like silk. "Yes, this will help. Thank you, human." She turned and began working on her craft, her hands moving with precision and speed. Kor watched in amazement, realizing just how advanced her technology was. The metal rod seemed to integrate seamlessly into the ship's structure, glowing as if it were alive. "Can I help?" he asked tentatively, stepping closer. She paused, looking at him with those luminous violet eyes. "You understand machines?" "I'm a mechanic," he said, gesturing to his tool belt. "Fixing things is kind of my thing." She hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes, help. Time's short." As they worked together, Kor couldn't help but steal glances at her. There was an otherworldly beauty about her, a combination of strength and vulnerability that drew him in. Despite the language barrier, they managed to communicate through gestures and simple words. "What's your name?" he asked as he handed her a wrench. She tilted her head, considering his question. "Arvani," she said finally. "You?" "Kor," he replied, feeling a strange sense of pride that she trusted him enough to share her name. "So, Arvani, what brings you to Earth?" She frowned, her expression darkening. "Crash. Mission. Danger. Need fix ship." Kor nodded, sensing there was more to the story but deciding not to push. Well, you're lucky, you landed near someone who knows a thing or two about fixing things. As the hours passed, they made progress on the ship. Arvani's initial guarded demeanor began to soften, and Kor found himself captivated by her intelligence and determination. Despite the strangeness of the situation, he felt an odd sense of comfort in her presence, as if they were meant to meet. When they finally finished the repairs for the day, Arvani leaned against the craft, her expression weary. "Thank you, Kor," she said softly, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. He smiled, sitting beside her on the cool grass. "You're welcome, but something tells me this is just the beginning." Arvani looked up at the sky, her eyes reflecting the stars. "Yes, just beginning." For the first time in years, Kor felt a spark of something he couldn't quite name, a mix of curiosity, excitement, and a strange sense of connection. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for sure, life as he knew it would never be the same. The forest was quiet as the two of them made their way back to Kor's small workshop on the outskirts of Sundrift. The motorcycle's engine hummed softly, the alien girl Arvani riding behind him, her hands rested lightly on his shoulders. Though her touch was almost imperceptible, it made Kor's heartbeat just a little faster. He wasn't used to company, let alone an alien companion who seemed both otherworldly and strangely vulnerable. When they reached the workshop, Kor killed the engine and glanced back at her. She surveyed the place with cautious curiosity, the glow from her eyes reflected off the old, rusted tools hanging on the walls, casting faint shadows that danced with the flickering workshop lamp. "It's not much," Kor said with a sheepish smile, "but it's home." Arvani stepped inside, her movements fluid yet tentative, as if she were testing the safety of the space. She touched the edge of a workbench, her fingers gliding over the worn wood. "Home is different," she murmured thoughtfully. "Where I live, there's no feeling like this, so cold, huh?" "Sounds rough," Kor replied. Grabbing a blanket from a nearby stool, he offered it to her. She stared at it for a moment, her expression unreadable, before draping it awkwardly over her shoulders. "This is warm," she said, a hint of wonder in her voice. "You humans, strange but kind." Kor chuckled, leaning against the bench. "You're not so bad yourself." "So what now?" "Your ship's still busted, and those government types will sniff around soon enough." Arvani's expression darkened. "Yes, danger. For both. They want my technology, my ship." Her words were fragmented but clear enough to send a shiver down Kor's spine. "Well, if they're coming, we need to keep you hidden." "You're safe here for now," he said. She hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Trust you." Her simple words stirred something deep within him. Trust wasn't something Kor came by often. He lived a quiet, solitary life ever since his family moved away years ago. To have someone, especially someone so extraordinary, put their faith in him felt oddly significant. As the hours stretched into the night, Kor prepared a simple meal of canned soup and bread. Arvani observed him intently, her violet eyes tracking his every move. "Food?" she asked as he handed her a bowl. "Yes, food," he replied with a grin. "Humans need it to survive. Don't tell me you don't eat where you're from." She tilted her head, considering. "Eat? Yes, but not like this." Her attempt to use the spoon was clumsy at first, but Kor couldn't help laughing softly as she tried to mimic him. "You'll get the hang of it," he said, demonstrating. After a third spoonful, she managed to eat without spilling. "Tastes different," she said, her lips curving into what might have been a smile. "Good, the sight of you smiling, even just a little, warmed me more than I cared to admit." "Glad you like it," he said, his voice softer than intended. Later, as they sat outside the workshop gazing up at the stars, Arvani spoke again, her voice hesitant but carrying a quiet strength. "My people, no feel, no connection. Always alone." Kor turned to her, his brow furrowing. "No emotions. How do you live like that?" "Not live, but survive." She said, her gaze fixed on the sky, "Your world, warm, full of feelings. Everywhere. Strange here. You're not strange, Kor said firmly. Different, sure, but not strange. If anything, we humans could learn a thing or two from someone like you. She looked at him, her luminous eyes searching his face. You're not like others. Kor chuckled. I could say the same about you. A silence fell between them, not uncomfortable but the kind that spoke volumes, filled with unspoken understanding. The stars above seemed closer than ever, their light casting a soft glow over Arvani's silvery skin. As the days passed, they settled into an unspoken rhythm. Kor worked tirelessly on repairing Arvani's ship, using scraps from his workshop and a few parts salvaged from nearby junkyards. Arvani, in turn, began to help him with his work, her alien knowledge proving invaluable. One day, as they worked side by side on the ship, Arvani paused and looked at him. Why help me? Kor wiped his brow and shrugged. I don't know, maybe because you needed it, maybe because you're the most interesting thing to happen to this town in, well, ever. She tilted her head, studying him. Interesting. Good. Definitely good, he said with a smile. Besides, I like a challenge. Her lips curved into another faint smile. You strange human, I'll take that as a compliment. One evening, a storm rolled in. The wind howled and rain lashed against the workshop's tin roof. Kor lit a small fire in the corner stove, its warmth filling the space. Arvani sat close to the flames, her silvery skin shimmering in the flickering light. Storms rare on my world, she said softly. They're pretty common here. Kor replied, kind of beautiful, don't you think? Chaotic, but alive. She nodded slowly. Your world alive. Different. I envy it. Kor leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. Maybe it's not just my world, maybe it's you. You're seeing things differently now. Arvani's gaze met his, and for a moment, the air between them seemed to hum with an unspoken connection. You make me see, she said softly. Kor swallowed, his heart pounding. Arvani, you're something else, you know that? She tilted her head, a curious expression on her face. Something else means special. He explained in an almost whisper, for the first time, Arvani, I think I feel something I can't quite name. Her smile reached her eyes. Special. I like this love, she repeated, the word foreign yet profound on her lips. I think so, too, Kor said, his voice trembling slightly. At least, that's what I'm feeling. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, Arvani leaned closer, her face inches from his. I feel too, love, Kor's heart soared. He closed the distance between them, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both tender and electric. Her cool touch contrasted with the warmth of the moment, creating a sensation that was entirely new, entirely theirs. The kiss lingered, a perfect moment suspended in time. When they finally pulled apart, Kor smiled, his hand brushing her cheek. I didn't think this was how my life would go, but I'm glad it did. Arvani's smile was small but genuine. Me too, Kor. You change me, you've changed me, too. He said softly. They stayed like that for a while, wrapped in the warmth of their newfound connection. But as the fire burned low and the stars began to fade, reality crept back in, the agents were still searching, and the danger was still looming. Their time together felt fleeting, fragile. The next day, as they worked on the ship, Kor couldn't shake the weight in his chest. He knew that once the repairs were done, Arvani would leave. She had a mission, a destiny, and he couldn't hold her back. Arvani, he said hesitantly, when your ship's ready, what happens next? She paused, her hands stilling on the control panel. I go fight for my people. Kor nodded, his throat tight. And us? She turned to him, her eyes filled with something he couldn't quite name, hope, sorrow, love. I don't know, but I won't forget, never. He stepped closer, his hands resting on her shoulders. "I don't want to lose you." "You never lose," she said, placing her hand over his heart. "Here, always." Her words brought him a bittersweet comfort. He knew their time together was limited, but what they had was real, and it would stay with him no matter what. As the sun set that evening, they shared another kiss, this one deeper, filled with both love and the looming shadow of goodbye. The future was uncertain, but for now, they had each other, and that was enough. The next morning brought a tense, electric stillness. The quarry was quiet except for the occasional chirping of birds, but Kor couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. He tightened a bolt on Arvani's ship, trying to focus on the task at hand, but his mind was elsewhere. His instincts were rarely wrong. "Almost ready," Arvani said, her voice steady but low. She was crouched beside him, her glowing patterns flickering faintly, a sign of her exhaustion and the stress she was trying to hide. Kor glanced at her, his chest tightening. He wanted to tell her to take a break, to rest, but he knew she wouldn't listen. She was driven by something deeper, the need to return to her world and fight for her people's freedom. He admired her for it, even if it meant she'd leave him behind. Then, the sound of engines cut through the air, sharp and foreboding. Kor froze, his wrench slipping from his hand. The low hum grew louder, closer. "They're here," he said grimly, his voice barely above a whisper. Arvani stood, her expression hardening. "We fight. We don't have a choice." Black SUVs roared into the quarry, kicking up clouds of dust as they came to a screeching halt. Agents poured out, weapons drawn, their movements precise. Special Agent Dravik stepped forward, his piercing blue eyes locking onto Kor and Arvani. "Step away from the ship," Dravik barked, his voice commanding and cold. Kor stepped in front of Arvani instinctively, his fists clenched. "You don't need to do this," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "She's not a threat." Dravik's gaze shifted to Arvani, his expression unreadable. "She's an alien fugitive with technology far beyond what humans can comprehend. She's a threat just by existing." "She's more than that," Kor snapped. "She's a person, and she doesn't deserve whatever it is you're planning to do to her." Dravik's lips curled into a cold smile. "You're naive, Mr. Kor. Step aside, or you'll face the consequences." Kor didn't move. "You'll have to go through me first," he said. Before Dravik could respond, Arvani stepped forward, her glowing patterns bright with intensity. She held a small cylindrical device in her hand, its surface pulsating with light. "I mean no harm, but no surrender," she said, her voice resonating with authority. Dravik raised his hand, signaling the agents to move in. "Take them," he ordered. Kor acted on instinct. He grabbed a metal rod from the ground and swung it at the nearest agent, knocking the weapon from their hand. Chaos erupted. The agents surged forward, weapons raised, but Arvani was faster. She pressed a button on the device, and a shimmering shield of light enveloped both her and Kor, bullets ricocheted off the shield harmlessly. Yet, the strain was evident on Arvani's face. "Shield won't last long," she said through gritted teeth. "Then we need to even the odds," Kor said, his mind racing. He spotted a pile of rocks nearby and began hurling them at the agents, creating enough of a distraction for Arvani to recalibrate the shield. Amid the chaos, Dravik shouted orders, his frustration mounting. "Focus on the ship. Secure it at all costs." Kor's heart sank as he saw a group of agents moving toward the ship. "They're going for your ship," he yelled to Arvani. She nodded, her determination unwavering. "Don't let them." Arvani deactivated the shield and charged forward, her movements swift and precise. With a flick of her wrist, she activated another device, sending out a pulse of energy that knocked several agents off their feet. Kor followed close behind, using whatever tools and scraps he could find as makeshift weapons. They fought side by side, their movements in sync despite the chaos. Kor couldn't help but marvel at Arvani's strength and agility. She was unlike anyone he'd ever known, and he was determined to protect her no matter the cost. As the battle raged on, Kor and Arvani managed to push back the agents, but their victory was short-lived. Dravik stepped forward, a sleek, high-tech weapon in his hands, and aimed it directly at Arvani. "Enough of this. You're coming with us, alien, dead or alive." Time seemed to slow as Kor saw Dravik's finger tighten on the trigger. Without thinking, he lunged forward, tackling Dravik to the ground. The weapon fired an energy blast as the chaos around them reached a fever pitch.